talking about the war in Ukraine, the future of war, and how are we going to destroy ourselves of all the multiple ways? They're also enticing. What do you say, Devin?
Or how are we gonna mercilessly destroy other countries in the future, man?
Oh, exactly, exactly. We have so many options these days.
I know
So
you and I
yeah,
have a bit of a fundamental disagreement on this one, which will
okay.
be interesting because I think that we've talked about this before, and you're pretty firmly in the camp of like, we will not fight ground wars again. And I have different thoughts. You want to fucking jump in on that?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I'm. This is like my actual position. I think is that we probably will fight more ground wars. I think that's kind of inevitable. But
Okay.
I read this Atlantic article when the war in Ukraine first happened, and it was this big piece about how we think land wars are not modern. We think that they're something from the 20th century, and it's weird to see them
Mm-hmm.
now. This author was making the case that that's actually not true. Like, it's a very modern thing
Okay.
still. And here's why. All these countries with all these tanks and blah, 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 and the reasons why they happen. It's an art. It's an argument. It makes sense. But, like, my position is it's still, like, it's not modern. No matter, like, they're going to happen, sure, but that doesn't mean it's a modern phenomenon. I think that it's an
Mm,
old-fashioned retrograde phenomenon, and it's
it feels
something
that way.
that I mean, I just read a piece today. Then I'll hand it over to you because I can definitely blather about this. But I just read a piece today about how while we were so distracted with our own ground wars in the Middle East, all of our, all of our big quote unquote enemies were gaining on us in terms of military technology because we were,
Oh,
just fucking around in the Middle East with like troops and boots on the ground and all these like things. Like, meanwhile, China is getting better at cyber attacks. And very recently, as of I think it was I forget when, but very recently, Russia just figured out how to bomb a satellite and take out a satellite with a missile. They tested it with their own satellite and just destroyed one of their satellites with a missile. Stuff like that is crazy. And so ground wars, yes, might still happen, but they're a distraction from what is going to be scary in the near future slash now. That's kind of my position.
okay. I I think I tend to agree with that. Although I think it's interesting. Like I think potentially ground wars will be an issue as long as we have like psycho despotic leaders. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
it seems like the human thirst for like daddy, you know what I mean, like an all encompassing father figure that leads the entire nation is still unquenched. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see Putin try to invade Ukraine, which has been like it's serious and it's fucked up. It was low key hilarious to watch this motherfucker try to like take a country that's like so small
Yeah. Yeah.
and just getting his ass handed to him, dude. I'm like, bro, I mean, it was like a couple of months ago and they were like, yeah, they're rolling out tanks from the 80s now. I'm like,
I
damn,
right.
bro, rolling out the tanks from the 80s though. Like,
Right.
it's just not a good look, bud.
It's a terrible look for Russia and on kind of on so many levels too. And I mean, I think that they just read the whole situation wrong. I think that they didn't expect all of Europe and the United States to just immediately get behind Ukraine. They thought their leader
Hmm.
was going to be weak. There
Right.
for so many reasons they kind of like miscalculated it. But what is your sensation on how important this war is? A lot of commentators I read are saying that this is the most important thing happening in the modern era because
Yeah,
it's going to have so many implications for freedom going forward and whether or
sure.
not these types of wars happen. And I'm sure that, China and that whole, their Taiwan is a comparable situation that might, be determined by Putin's war. What is your thought on that? Do you think that that's overblown, or is that accurate?
No, I'd say that's pretty spot on. I mean, it feels like geopolitically it's pretty important in the sense that we've got a nuclear power that's engaged in a large scale ground war where they're kind of holding back. They're like, we got nukes, but we're going to trot out all of our traditional military equipment. It's interesting to see. I mean, I kind of one of my I've got this thing where I go back and forth where we're giving so much aid to Ukraine. We've got all these problems here. And that's not the way the budget works, right? It's like money's allocated for different shit at different times. It is a little infuriating, but then I was talking with my girlfriend about it the other day, and she was saying the same thing. She was like, why are we giving them so much money? We've got all these problems here. And I'm like, well, because we fucking hate Russia. We just got done with a fucking 50+ year Cold War with these motherfuckers.
Right.
And I think everybody is Mr. Burnsing about just slowly bleeding them of their military resources, which seems important because it's weird to have, China's obviously a similar situation where you've got a semi-despotic ruler who's got nuclear weapons. They seem a little more controlled in the way that they do stuff, but then again, they haven't really made a move in a long time. They could make a move and
they kind of never
change.
do. That's what I've read.
Yeah, they
China just never does anything. Yeah.
I think I don't want to digress too much into that, but
Right.
with the Russia Ukraine situation, it seems super important, man. It's weird to be in the modern age and see a troops on the ground war. It's crazy to see Ukrainians MacGyvering, crazy improvised explosives off drones and using pretty kind of guerrilla modern tactics to take out strategic objectives, whether they're in their own territory. They've been striking into Russia a little bit. I think it's fascinating. The whole world is paying a lot of attention to how a ground war gets fought between two people that fucking don't have a lot of military, they just don't have a strong modernized military, or if they did, a lot of that shit's blown up by now. I think it does set a little bit of a precedent though, because with isolated despotic ruler types, they can think anything. They could think anything's possible,
right.
because they're living in an echo chamber of yes people that are just oh yeah, fucking yeah, well, we could do that. Yeah, why not? And we've got a handful of folks on the other side of the ocean that are definitely within their scope to be able to kind of invade almost anybody. I don't get why Europe's not more stressed out about it. It
right.
trips me out that America is the one that's jumping in and being like, yeah, fuck that, because I'm like, dude, they're right there.
Right.
They're right fucking there. And they're like, oh, I don't know what the logic is. Is it not a strong military industrial complex in Europe? Is it they don't want to disturb, trade routes, oil and gas pipelines, energy supplies, stuff like that? But it has been really tripping me out, because you would think that Europe would be like, no, fuck this, dude. We can't let these motherfuckers any closer to us. So I think it's super consequential. I think it's super consequential for Europe, the folks that are close to Europe, other despotic rulers that might get a bright idea, and also that we're pouring billions and billions of dollars into it. And what is, kind of inarguably at this point, a proxy war, right?
Right. Yeah, one thing that's I really liked how you phrased that we're bleeding Russia dry of their military equipment. I think that that's very interesting. I saw a thing this week where Putin apparently is begging people to move to Russia. I don't know if you've seen how poor Russia is, but it's pretty goofy. It's something like 1 in 3 Russians, or maybe even higher than that, don't have running water or electricity or some stable electricity. It's insane. Once you get out of Moscow and St. Petersburg, it's not doing okay. They're not doing good.
It's so cheap.
I'm sure it is. But I think that if I were, we talk about why are we sending another 3 billion to Ukraine, but we've got cash to burn. I think just in California our surplus is a couple billion.
Yeah.
if I were a Russian citizen, I mean, I know they're not getting the full story from their media. Clearly, that's a thing. But
Yeah,
if I were, just imagine if you were seeing not only all this money pouring in to this cause, but also all these people dying. I mean, the casualty
yeah,
list already is kind of wild.
it's wild.
And it's like, sons and daughters and the whole thing. And how do those parents feel losing their sons to this dumb cause?
For
This
what, right? So they can retain like a critical shipping hub, right? Like Ukraine is
yeah.
Russia's only seaboard access port to the rest of the world. It's basically the pinch point where they have access to the ocean, and so it's
Yeah,
like, yeah, of course it makes sense in a strategic way, but try selling that to a fucking population, dude.
right. I'm sure there's all kinds of strategic reasons that justify it, quote unquote, justify it. I'm sure that there are plenty, and most of them have to do with Putin's ego, at some level.
Yeah,
But I mean, you know, as we saw, we've seen with other countries, Hong Kong and Taipei, places like this, you can gain wealth just by opening yourself up to the world. Whenever you close yourself off from the world, which is the end result of his war, right? He's been
right.
closed off from the world.
Oh,
When
it's
you
over.
do the opposite, and when you have great relations with the world and you open yourself up, that's when riches come. I mean, just like that little bit of wisdom, I feel like I want to try my hand at being a dictator just to ultra open myself up and become extremely wealthy. You know what I mean? Like, why
Yeah,
would you
dude.
not do that? Why would you not be loved by the global world?
You'll be the first poly dictator, dude. Just in an open relationship with the whole world.
The whole entire absolutely. We'd have the best cuisine and we'd be rich. You know,
Talk about America, dog.
well, exactly, right? That's
Totally.
kind of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It trips me out. I was shocked when it happened. And I was pretty angry when it happened too,
Mhm.
where it was like, yeah, I might have been a little extra because I was like, I posted on my fucking Instagram story. I was like, if you're posting about your fucking cat or your fucking dinner, you're an asshole, dude. So there's fucking war going on, like instantly lost like half my followers. Like,
Oh,
we're not, we're not about that, bro. I was like, okay, all right, pump the brakes, but still, man, y'all should be paying attention. But then as it drags on, there's definitely like a media fatigue that's happening
oh
with
yeah.
it, where people are like, but the other thing that kind of trips me out too is like we put a lot of sanctions on Russia to begin with, and there was like I don't know, heavy sanctioning or whatever that was happening in the beginning, but it's like, damn, if that's not enough to get just completely fucking cut off from the rest of the world, like just cut off. You know what I mean? Like that kind of still trips me out too, where they're still doing business, man. They still it's not like they're limited to 3 or 4 countries that they're doing business with. People are like, oh well, we're only going to buy 10% of their energy, or we're only going to fucking, you know what I mean? Well, we'll put some sanctions on them, but yeah, let them live a little bit. I'm like, dude, if we're in 2022 and you engage in a ground conflict with another, and back to your kind of statement about, is this important or not? It's like, yeah, it's really fucking important because it
Mhm.
should be like, a penal system with this kind of shit. This is why we have NATO, right? This
Mhm.
is why we have NATO, because we're supposed to be like, hey, if anybody fucks around, everybody's coming down on your ass. And they're like, well, but they're like bordering one of the NATO states. So, I mean, what can we really do? I'm like, well, we got to shut them off. We got to
Mhm.
completely shut everything off to these motherfuckers and starve them out. And it sucks because the people there are legit, man. I mean, Russian people are fucking awesome, man. Russian people in the United States that I know some folks that like are, first generation immigrants from Russia.
Me
Fucking
too.
great
Yeah.
people, man. You don't want to see the people suffer. But at the same time, you do have to put the country in a position where the people are like, hey, shit's getting a little rough here. We need you to fucking knock it off, And it's a shame that we're not at that. It feels like we were kind of tipping towards that, and then it's kind of moved back towards the middle again, where everybody's just kind of watching on Instagram and like, on Reddit, and you're like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, they fucking knocked out a couple tanks and shit's still going on. It's like, nah, dude, like we can't let this shit go on. We cannot let ground wars be fucking happening in places for fucking territory. I mean, like, then again, United States, Iraq, Afghanistan, 20 years, a lot of fucking people died, man. Over 1 million people fucking died in that war, and it was ridiculous, right? It was the feigned moral kind of interest in it. We're like, oh, we're gonna stomp out terrorism. Like, man, fuck you, dude. You know that's not gonna happen. It is a little different than being like, hey, I want that piece of land. I'm like, dude, it's not 1897. We're not doing the colonial thing anymore. You know, it's like, at least fucking try to cover your ass with like some kind of like morally justifiable cause. Not that you should do that either. And to be completely transparent, like the Iraq War, total bullshit, insane. It's fucking insane that we were there for 20 years.
Well, but, let me pause you for just 1 second, because I want to drill into that just a little bit. Have you followed at all Roger Waters' talking point on this?
I have. I'm gonna go
or
see Chomsky on the 23rd, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so the setup here is that he has this very like aggressive rant about how, like, sure, Russia's bad, couple things there, but like, look at us, we're so much worse because of this and this and this and this, and he lists off all these things. I definitely have a critique of that perspective, but I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I do too. That was insane. I was watching, I'm like, I'm watching the interview, I'm like, no, fair points. And then he goes, well, how would you feel if this is all about NATO and NATO pushing in on Russia's boundaries, as if it's like a terrorist organization, or as if it's like a state-sponsored terrorist or something that's like pushing. He's like, how would the United States feel if China was, setting up military bases in Canada and Mexico? And I'm like, look, fair point. I see, but you're just apples and oranges, buddy. Like, NATO is a treaty alliance. The whole purpose of NATO is to prevent wars from happening, right? Then again, World War I, obviously, treaty alliances a little susceptible to creating world wars. You know what I'm saying? But I thought that was fucking outrageous, dude. I'm like, yeah, you got a good point, obviously, but you can't do that. You can't be like, well, look at these guys over here. They're just trying to fucking protect their shit. And look what we did. And it's like the whataboutism, like the fact that that's caught on in the last 20 years. Well, what about this? And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's a logical fallacy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you actually can't use that in an argument.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, everything that he said, it's either true or there's a grain of truth to it, right? So, but my whole thing is, okay, sure, granted for a lot of these things, but that isn't the basis to form your whole perspective on this issue about, like, have that perspective and, like, sit on it and take it into consideration as we do anything militarily ever, right? Like, we're never going to repeat Iraq again. Let's never repeat Afghanistan again. We've done horrible things. So has, like, legit every country ever. So maybe not Canada. I don't know. But, like, we
have you ever heard of the indigenous folks in Canada? Like,
well,
not a blameless group.
Very true. I mean, exactly. Absolutely. So, I mean, I just recently, this might be a tangent, but it's interesting to me. I just recently read The Bomber Mafia by Malcolm Gladwell. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. I've heard some excerpts from it, but not I haven't read it yet.
So, I mean, I thought it was great. And here's like the gist of it. And I know nothing about war. I know some historians had some gripes with this book, but like, let's just say it's all legit. During World War II, there was this new technology that allowed us to drop bombs strategically so that we wouldn't have to flatten a whole city. This was the idea, right? Because before that, the whole idea was, let's flatten cities.
Right.
Then the people will, lose
capitulate.
Morale, and they will. Okay, right.
Yeah.
So we developed this technology so that we could precision drop a bomb to take out electric grids, to take out manufacturing plants, all those sorts of things. Here's the two interesting takeaways, though. The first is that it didn't really work. It was too early. The technology wasn't there yet, and we put tons of effort into it. It was like a grand vision to not destroy cities and kill a bunch of people. It was this very high moral ground to position to take, but it didn't really work. The other part of it was when you do just bomb cities, in general, it didn't actually dissuade people from like still having that spirit of let's fight this thing. Instead, it made the general population become even more into it. You know,
Right.
even more into the cause. Because look at these people bombing our beautiful buildings.
Right.
Fuck them.
Fuck these guys.
Let's double down. What we ended up doing at the end of this, and somehow I was kind of unaware of this point in history to the extent of it. Before we dropped the atomic bombs in Japan, we were dropping napalm on all their cities, and it killed way more people than the nuclear weapons killed. It devastated Tokyo. I mean, on and on and on and on, and it made people burn to death. Whole
Right.
neighborhoods and whole like sections of cities would be destroyed, and people would have burned to
Right.
death. I mean, the most horrible thing, mothers, children, the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting how these military guys get it in their brain that everything is just some sort of a strategy, and they don't really think about anything other than the chess moves of it.
Right.
There's kind of like that level of it where even these like the guy who destroyed Japan with napalm didn't before that he does these things, you're kind of sympathetic to his cause because he really wants to end the war as soon as possible so that
Sure.
then fewer people will die. I mean, that's kind of like his metric, and
Right.
everyone has their own metric, but like, oh my god, it's killing so many people, and at the end of the day it really is like, holy shit, war is just the worst thing. Why would anybody ever do this? Ever,
Right.
like on either side. Why
Right.
would anyone start this? Why would anyone engage in this? The whole thing, it really just makes you just want to be like, oh God, like, okay, I'm, I'm gonna go listen to Donovan and a song about the Universal Soldier
Yeah.
about how if you just don't show up to war, there is no war. I think that's
Right.
kind of the position that you have to take after like just dipping your toes into the war thing a little bit. I don't know. What are your thoughts on any of that?
I mean, yeah, the war thing, I think unfortunately we're in a situation as primal humans, especially as men, where there's a thirst for a lot of things that come with war. There's a high level of adrenaline. There's a
Mhm.
brotherhood. There's a teamwork aspect, sisterhood. A lot of women are now engaged in combat, and I think that that is potentially one of the drivers, at least in the United States.
Mhm.
You've got a huge population of dudes that are just fucking. They just want to fucking do shit. You know what I mean? And there's
Yeah.
nothing quite as intense as going somewhere and getting shot at. There's also a ton of bad guys in the world, just straight up bad guys. And yeah, man, I fucking don't know, dude. It feels like as the world is becoming more modern, we're becoming more sensitized in a certain way to bloodshed in the real world, in certain contexts. I guess my overall thought on it is that there's always going to be this type of fighting as long as there's intense resource scarcity and high levels of
Yeah.
corruption in places where there's no infrastructure. It's like it drives me insane that the Taliban are fucking running, Afghanistan right now, because it's just like, dude, these people are living like it's 1450. I
I
mean, they're
know.
not even living like it's the 17 or 1800. These people are fucking literally being forced to live like it's the like pre-Renaissance, like the Dark Ages. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's crazy to see a country living like that in the modern world, and then we forget because we're here that a lot of people are living like that still, man. Like
Oh yeah.
resource scarcity
Oh
is
yeah.
so unbelievably real, and in a place where there's high levels of resource scarcity, it almost goes hand in hand with corruption because people are living hand to mouth. You get one step up the ladder, you want to keep it. You get the next step, you want to keep it. You get the next step, you want to keep it, because there's people dying on the streets. And you don't see that much in the United States. The political class here, they're obviously crooks, but it's not at the same level. You know what I'm saying? It's that most people aren't in general just dying of starvation out on the streets in the
Right.
United States. And so we just have a completely different fucking focus and mentality when it comes to like war. Like why would we go fight a war unless it's for some kind of like high high moral cause, but then you've got people on the other side of the world, man, that are living in the fucking Stone Age still.
Mhm.
They might have cell phones, but they're still living in mud huts, dog. And like those people, they're going to be motivated by a completely different set of beliefs and ideas, and are going to be activated by a completely different set of rhetoric and propaganda. And like my general feeling on this future warfare thing is that we don't all live in the future. Once we all live in the future, maybe warfare will become more technical, will become more cyber. Maybe it'll be mostly drones, but man, like over 50%, if not more, of the world lives in a situation that's not even relevant, man. Like they're still fighting for
Yeah.
fucking resources,
I mean,
dude.
the future of war, absolutely. I mean, kind of no brainer. It comes down to the superpowers and what they're able to, the clever, ultra clever things they're able to get up to in laboratories and things like this.
Right.
DARPA. Although, I mean, one of the things that's very interesting to me, maybe in contradiction of that point, is how we are going to discover more and more technologies that are going to make mass destruction of humanity cheaper and easier to get our hands on.
Sure.
And so this is like bioweapon technology for one.
Drone
I mean,
swarms.
that's a big one. Drone swarms. I mean,
That's
this
a
is like,
serious one.
oh yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, like,
Yeah.
just imagine a little hacker lab that gets their hands on a drone swarm technology, and maybe it's $100 million. Anybody can raise $100 million. Really, if you're
Yeah.
you've got any sort of a maybe like China or the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, or maybe they just fund a little side project that let's look at, and maybe that side project gets, there's so many different ways that something horrible could go wrong, and all of a sudden you have a biolab that's just developed Ebola that's easy that spreads by air, or
Sure.
you know what I mean? I mean, like, and one other thing on that point, I guess, is that it might not even be a matter of any sort of a state actor.
Sure.
There's potential for technologies to be in ultra rogue hands too.
Right.
Maybe a religious sect, or I mean, who knows? And I do think just because of that, the way that we're no longer talking, whether you live in the the wilds of some like ultra rural civilization, or like America, we're not talking about sticks and stones anymore.
Right.
We're talking about bioweapons and drones, and just who knows? Really, like who knows?
I have two thoughts on that. One
Yeah.
is that this always blows my mind, and I might have the date a little bit off, but the cell phone was invented in like the 50s, right? As a military technology.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know about that shit until like the 80s, right? The
Yeah.
SR-71 Blackbird, built in like I think the late 60s, early 70s, wasn't declassified till the 90s. We're always on a 30-year delay with
Mm-hmm.
technology, with military technology, with where it's at, where it's going. I used to live in Colorado. I drive by NORAD every day to go to school. NORAD is a fucking hollowed out mountain, and they joke, they're like, dude, if a bird shits in fucking Pakistan, dude, like these motherfuckers know about it. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so I like kind of bookends with my other point, which is you'd have to be fucking insane to try to attack the United States. You'd have
Oh
to be
yeah.
fucking insane.
Oh,
And I think
absolutely.
that kind of goes for all the world powers. And in a certain way, I think the future of war, that's why it's so crazy to watch a world power engage in a meaningless ground war with another country. It's almost it's a mind bender, because we've all been keeping this peace, and I think everybody, all global elites, even if you're a conspiracy theorist, you think there's gonna be one world government, dude, nobody wants to be fucking fighting wars, man, besides military contractors, people who have a financial interest in continuing to produce military technology. But yeah, man, I guess maybe a little counter to my previous point about people continuing to fight, as long as there's resource scarcity. Well, there's just not that much resource scarcity in developed countries. There is, but at a relative level. You know what I'm saying? Relative to people dying on the street, not really. And I think that we are entering an era where NATO is fucking a lot of countries, dude. You know, and that's a big deal. This is the first time in history that this many countries have been allied together to say, hey, we're not doing this anymore, guys. And I think that it's inevitable that that spreads, and that powers like Russia are contained in that way. And China too, who knows what they're going to do if they make a move on Taiwan. It's not super consequential in the global scale. It's consequential in the same way that Russia invades Ukraine, where it's you're like, we don't do this anymore, guys, you know. And it could give some people some ideas, but at the end of the day, man, I don't see us like cracking into a brand new era of colonialism, military colonialism. You know, I think most people are pretty engaged in the idea that like we'd like to stay peaceful, except for in the face of tremendous evil, which in a certain way, the Iraq war, like I get it. I see how they sold it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, inarguably, these motherfuckers are running this country now. And I think anybody that knows anything about what's going on there probably wants somebody to go over there and stop it. You know what I'm saying? But it's just not that easy, you know? So I don't know. My kind of general overview on the subject is, as we move into the future, I think we will see organizations like NATO continue to expand until we get to the point where, you know, the very few bad actors that we have in the world right now, and you know, China maybe as a bit of an outlier because they're a huge country that's a bad actor, but every other country is relatively inconsequential to like the unbelievable military capabilities of the rest of the world combined. So I'm hoping that this serves as a way to bleed Russia, bleed them dry. You know, I think the only thing they're gonna have left after this is nukes. And like, people are like, well, they've got hypersonic nukes. They could hit the United States. We wouldn't even know it. I don't buy it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no.
I don't buy it. People are like, oh, but they've got, and it's like, dude, you don't even know what we have. You know what I mean? Probably 30 years ago, we had shit to deal with that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And they won't let us know if we have that type of capability.
No.
So, you know, I'm hoping, and the vision that I do see going into the future is, yeah, maybe there's cyber attacks and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, what are you stealing? You're stealing data, information. Maybe you shut down a power grid for a minute. You're not going to cause mayhem. You know what I'm saying? And if somebody does cause mayhem, they know that we're fucking psycho.
Like, yeah, right.
Just, you know what I mean? And it's like, you're not going to do that to us. And we're kind of, we're basically in a position right now where we dictate the pace of the game. You know, as America, it continues to be a powerful country and continues to have a really suppressive global influence on everything that happens that we don't like. I don't think that we're going to see this balloon into some kind of, global warfare or anything like that. I think people are just a little too freaked out of like psycho countries like China, but especially America, being like, nah, fuck you, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the one X factor in all of this is who is going to be those psycho dictators of the future, right? We still have exactly right. We still have the like the boomer generation doing their psycho dictator shit across the world globally. What's the iteration of the millennial or the Gen X dictator? What are they like? You know, are they more psycho? Do they dial it back and just like seek VR, kingdoms or something?
Yeah, I just don't think they exist, man. I think that people like below the boomer generation just have a much more multifaceted view of reality. And when you're talking about, like you're right, people like military experts are looking at pieces on a chessboard. And I don't think that anyone our age, younger, maybe even a little bit older, is really going to look at it that way. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was going to say, I don't know. I've never, looked at a study on this, but when I just look at the news, I've never seen a young guy being hawkish. Like, rarely, right? Have you ever?
No.
They're always 50 plus, always.
Yeah,
like they're super hawkish
definitely.
people.
Yeah, I mean, look, dude, we talked about this a couple podcasts ago, but like boomers and to some extent Gen Xers lived in a media environment where there was one funnel. You know what I mean? You put your fucking mouth up to the funnel and you just fucking take whatever's in there. And we just don't live like that anymore. I think that older generations are a lot more accustomed to simplifying things and breaking them down into their constituent parts. And that's just, we live in a fucking, in a quantum era where that's just not possible. There's too many moving parts and everybody's aware of them now.
Absolutely. Sorry to cut you off. I got to run in just a minute, but let me throw out two oddball characters that are pretty damn young, like our age, I think. Kim Jong-un and MBS, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
we're gonna not be totally running short on crazy dictators. I don't know. But in terms of, I
Yeah.
think, American politics and like the global superpowers, the and MBS, he's mostly just concerned with his own wealth, I think.
Oh
And
yeah.
Kim Jong Un, he's probably just concerned with posturing and trying to keep his head above water. I'm sure day to day, it's insane for his life. So maybe those aren't even the scariest of examples, but I'm sure we have our fair share of psychopaths in power. But that's the big question, who's going to be the psychopath, the Hitlers of the future, sort of a thing. That I don't know. Are there going to be any? I am with you. I don't think so. Actually,
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so, man.
We're
I
different.
mean,
We're media age people, and we know what World War II was, and everyone's cringed at that. And like bad guys never win in those situations. Yeah, and winning means destroying the world at this point. I don't know. There's not much. There's not much.
final thought, and you'll have to excuse me if I'm listing a bit patriotic today. I did just watch Top Gun yesterday, which just fired up my fucking endemic
America,
patriotism.
woo!
But like final thought on a ridiculous note is that like nobody's really gonna fuck around that much because everybody's fucking afraid of us, dude. Like nobody wants to piss us off. You know what I'm saying? And like people are gonna probably give me heat for this, but I think it's true. I totally think it's true. I mean, fucking Russia's starting to learn their lesson now because we're fucking just funneling sick ass weapons into Ukraine. We got big ass missiles coming in. We're giving them fucking shit. Everybody's giving them shit. You know what I mean? It's like you don't want to fuck around like that because in the modern era, there's just too many ways to funnel resources into a proxy war and get your ass beat. Or if you want to get into a straight up war, dude, you're going to get your fucking ass beat. It's going to be a bad situation. And so, as much as people hate America for being like the global police, like, yo, dude, somebody's got to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not doing it right. There's no fucking question about that. We're not doing it right. We've got people in power that are too desensitized to what's actually happening on the ground and too fucking removed in echo chambers to really feel the implications when we created ISIS. You know what I'm saying? But on the other hand, somebody's got to be there being like, no, you can't fucking do that, man. And I think we're those guys for now because it's definitely not China. China's like, well, I mean, do you? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we'll see how it goes, man. I mean, who knows? Fucking San Francisco could get blown up tomorrow or something like that, and it would be fucking insane. But I don't know. I think we're gonna be okay. I think Russia's probably gonna totally get their ass beat by this teeny ass country because, dude, I don't even know why. That's fucking insane. So whatever precedent it's setting, it's probably a good one. I don't think that we should go into Ukraine and like put people on the ground and actually fight Russia, but I do think it's kind of tight that we're plugging them with all the sick weapons and stuff to like, throw it down on the old Ruskies.
Right. Well, hopefully this is the first and last major land war in Europe that we ever have to witness in our lives. It would be not cool if we have to like every 10 years check in on another land war in Europe. It's got to be a thing of the past, man. Maybe not today, obviously, but God, I hope soon.
Yeah, and Europe, get your boys together, bro.
Oh, exactly. And like we're not
get your
like
boys, bro.
We're not worried about like Canada invading us. I mean, come on, like make peace with your neighbors and I don't know.
Yeah, if you gotta throw down, sometimes you gotta throw down, dude. You gotta puff up a little bit when somebody's fucking trying to, cut in on your shit, dog.
Yeah. I mean,
Don't let us be the guys.
Europe is crazy for so many different reasons why we love it, I guess. But it's I'm kind of happy. End of the day, we live in a massive, ultra rich, landlocked country surrounded by friends. It's good. I would hate to be in Poland right now. You know what I mean? I'm sure Poland is lovely. I would hate to be in Poland right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Right. Hey, well, good talks as always. And
rousing talk, my boy.
And we'll check in